Good morning, class 6. We will start chapter 6, new questions and ideas of your history book. This chapter we have reduced when the syllabus was reduced to 70%, but we will be doing this chapter for your understanding. Anagha's school trip. This was the first time Anagha was going on a school trip. They boarded the train from Pune in Maharashtra late at night to go all the way to Varanasi in Uttar Pradesh. Her mother, who came to see her off at the station, told the teacher, "Do tell the children about Buddha and take them to see Sarnath as well." So this story begins with Anagha, who is going on a school trip, and her mother is requesting her teacher to take her to Sarnath, which is a place known in context to Buddhism. And she said that like if they will visit, they will get an information, get lot of knowledge about Buddha. Now the story of the Buddha. Siddhartha, also known as Gautam, the founder of Buddhism, was born about 2500 years ago. This was a time of rapid change in the lives of people. As you saw in chapter 5, some kings in the Mahajanpadas were growing more powerful. New cities were developing and life was changing in the villages as well. Many thinkers were trying to understand these changes in society. They also wanted to try and find out the true meaning of life. The Buddha belonged to a new Gana known as the Sakya Gana and was a Kshatriya. So this much information you all must have, that Buddha belonged to the tribe which was known as Sakya, and he was a Kshatriya, and he introduced the religion which is known as Buddhism. He was very young when he left his home. He left the comfort of his home in search of the knowledge. He wandered for several years, meeting and holding discussion with other thinkers. He finally decided to find his own path to realization and meditated for days on end under a peepal tree at Bodh Gaya in Bihar, where he attained enlightenment. After that, he was known as the Buddha or the Wise One. So when he got the enlightenment under a peepal tree, and since then he was known as the Wise Man. He then went to Sarnath near Varanasi, where he taught for first time. He spent the rest of his life traveling on foot, going from place to place, teaching people till he passed away at Kushinara. The Buddha taught that life is full of suffering and unhappiness. This is caused because we have cravings and desires which often cannot be fulfilled. So according to him, the cause for suffering is the desire, and he gave eightfold path for and according to him, if people followed those eightfold path, they will be able to overcome the desire which leads to the cause of unhappiness and suffering. So even if we get what we want, we are not satisfied and want even more, or want other things. So being human beings, we always have the desire to have something, and once we attain that thing, then we have desire to get something else. So he taught that this constant craving could be removed by following moderation in everything. He also taught people to be kind and to respect the lives of others, including animals. He believed that the result of our actions, called karma, whether good or bad, affect us both in this life and the next. The Buddha taught in the language of the ordinary people, and that language was Prakrit, so that everybody could understand his message. What was the language used to compose the Vedas? He also encouraged people to think for themselves rather than to simply accept what he said. Let us see how he did this. So you can see the stupa, which is at Sarnath, and this was built to mark the place where the Buddha, he gave the first sermon here. The story of Kissa Gotami. Here is a famous story about Buddha. Once there was a woman named Kissa Gotami whose son had died. She was so sad that she roamed through the streets of the city carrying the child with her, asking for help to bring him back to life. A kind man took her to the Buddha. The Buddha said, "Bring me a handful of mustard seeds and I will bring your child back to life." Kissa Gotami was overjoyed and started off at once. But the Buddha gently stopped her and added, "The seed must come from the house of a family where nobody has died." Kissa Gotami went from door to door, but wherever she went, she found out that someone or the other, father, mother, sister, brother, husband, wife, child, uncle, aunt, grandfather, grandmother had died. So this story, Buddha asked her to get a handful of mustard seeds, and the condition which was applied to it was that she has to get it from a house where nobody has died. But then it is very difficult. In everybody's house, someone or somebody has surely is not alive. So it was difficult for her to get a handful of mustard seeds. What was the Buddha trying to teach that sorrowing mother? That although she is sad, and it was sad that she had lost her son, but then anybody who is losing somebody very close or near and dear one, then he or she will be sad. That's something which is very obvious. Upanishads. Around the time that the Buddha was preaching, and perhaps a little earlier, other thinkers also tried to find answers to difficult questions. Some of them wanted to know about life after death. Others wanted to know why sacrifices should be performed. Many of these thinkers felt that there was something permanent in the universe that would last even after death. They described this as the Atma, or the individual soul, and the Brahman, or the universal soul. They believed that ultimately both the Atma and the Brahman were one. So Upanishad was this was a time when Buddha was preaching, and you can say that people were having lots of questions, and they wanted answers to those questions. So many of them they felt that there was something permanent in the universe that could live, that is living even after a person dies, and they described this thing as Atma, or the individual soul, and the Brahman, or the universal soul. So they believed that ultimately when Atma is meeting the Brahman, that is the universal soul, or you can say that is the God. So many of these ideas, these were recorded in Upanishads. These were the books. They were part of later Vedic text. Upanishad, which literally means approaching and sitting near. 6 schools of Indian philosophy. Over centuries, India's intellectual exploration of truth has come to be represented by 6 systems of philosophy. These are known as Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Samakhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, and Vedanta, or Uttar Mimamsa. These 6 systems of philosophy are said to have been founded by sages Konada, Gautam, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, and Vyas, respectively. These philosophies still guide scholarly discourse in country. German-born British ideologist Friedrich Max Müller has observed that the 6 systems of philosophy were developed over many generations with contributions made by individual thinkers. However, today we find an underlying harmony in their understanding of truth, although they seem distinct from each other. So, now there is a story of the wise beggar. Here is a dialogue based on a story from one of the most famous Upanishad, the Chandogya Upanishad. And it is between Shaunaka and Abhipratarin were two sages who worshipped the universal soul. Once, as they sat down to eat, a beggar came and asked for some food. "We cannot spare anything for you," Shaunaka said. "Learned sir, whom do you worship?" the beggar asked. "The universal soul," Abhipratarin replied. "Ah, it means that you know that the universal soul fills the entire world." "Yes, yes, we know that," the sages nodded. "If the universal soul fills the whole world, it fills me too." "Who am I but a part of the world?" the beggar said. "You speak the truth, O young Brahmin." "Then, O sages, by not giving me food, you are actually denying food to the universal soul." The sages realized the truth of what the beggar said and shared their food with him. So the beggar was able to convince or make them understand that if they are not sharing the food and they believed in the universal soul, so they are denying food to the universal soul. And then finally they agreed to share their food with the old beggar. Upanishad, which means sitting near, and the text contains conversation between teacher and students. Often ideas were presented through simple dialogues. Most Upanishadic thinkers were men, especially Brahmins and Rajas. Occasionally, there is mention of women thinkers, such as Gargi, who was famous for her learning and particularly in debates held in royal courts. And participated. So she was in those days when women were not getting education. Gargi was famous for learning and she participated in the debates. Poor people rarely took part in these discussions. One famous exception was Satyakarna Jabala, who was named after his mother, the slave woman Jabali. He had a deep desire to learn about reality, was accepted as a student by a Brahmin teacher named Gautama, and became one of the best known thinkers of the time. Many of the ideas of Upanishads were later developed by the famous thinker Shankaracharya, about whom you will read in chapter 7. So you can see that here that discrimination was not that much. People and the ideas were taken from the mixed group, Panini. This was also the time when other scholars were at work. One of the most famous was Panini, who prepared a grammar for Sanskrit. He arranged the vowels and consonants in a special order and then used them to create formulae like those found in algebra. He used these to write down the rules of the language in short formulae, around 3,000 of them. So you can say that he was a grammarian, a person who had a lot of knowledge about grammar, and he developed formula in Sanskrit. Jainism. Now at the same time, the last and the 24th Tirthankara of the Jain, Vardhaman Mahavir, also spread his message around this time, that is 2500 years ago. He was a Kshatriya prince of the Lichavi group. Buddha was from Sakya and he was from a Lichavi group that was part of Vajji Sangh, about which you read in chapter 5. At the age of 30, he left home and went to live in a forest. For 12 years, he led a hard and lonely life, at the end of which he attained enlightenment. So, for 12 years, he constantly traveled and led a lonely life, and finally he got enlightenment. He taught a simple doctrine: men and women who wished to know the truth must leave their homes. So according to him, a person had to renounce the world if he or she wishes to know the truth and their home. They must follow very strictly the rules of ahimsa, which means not hurting or killing living beings, all beings. Said Mahavir. So according to him, a person had to live in cordial relations and cannot kill any living beings. Long to live. To all things life is dear. Ordinary people could understand the teachings of Mahavir and his followers because they used Prakrit. There were several forms of Prakrit used in different parts of the country, and named after the regions in which they were used. For example, the Prakrit spoken in Magad was known as Magadhi. Followers of Mahavir, who were known as Jainas, had to lead very simple lives, begging for food. They had to be absolutely honest and were specially asked not to steal. Also, they had to observe celibacy, that is, a person who cannot marry, who cannot lead a married life. And men had to give up everything, including their clothes. So, the followers of Mahavir, the lifestyle which he asked his followers to follow was little difficult, and he asked them that they could survive only by begging and getting the food, and then they had to be absolutely honest. They should not steal, they should not cheat anyone, they should lead a life where they will not have they will not go into marriage. The word Jaina comes from the term Jina, meaning conqueror. So, according to him, one who has conquered over his feelings, over his wishes and all, and is ready to lead a simple life. It was very difficult for most men and women to follow these strict rules. Nevertheless, thousands left their homes to learn and teach this new way of life. Many more remained behind and supported those who became monks and nuns, providing them with food. Jainism was supported mainly by traders. Farmers who had to kill insects to protect their crops found it more difficult to follow the rules. Over hundreds of years, Jainism spread to different parts of North India and to Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. The teachings of Mahavir and his followers were transmitted orally for several centuries. They were written down in the form in which they were presently available at a place called Vallabhi in Gujarat about 1500 years ago. So it was difficult for farmers, we can say, because they cannot kill, they were forbidden from killing the insects who were spoiling their crops. But then many followers came up, and they were from North India to Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and they agreed to follow the rules set by Vardhaman Mahavir. The Sangh, both the Mahavir and the Buddha felt that only those who felt their homes could gain true knowledge. So according to them, both of them believed that a person who wanted to achieve true knowledge had to leave their home, their married life. They arranged for them to stay together in the Sangh, an association for those who left their home. The rules were made for the Buddhist Sangh were written down in a book called Vinaya Pitaka. From this we know that there were separate branches for men and women. All men could join the Sangh. However, children had to take the permission of their parents and slaves that of their masters. Those who worked for the king had to take his permission, and debtors that of the creditors. Men and women who joined the Sangh led simple lives. They meditated for most of the time and went to cities and villages to beg for food during fixed hours. That is why they were known as bhikshus, the Prakrit word for renouncer, that is the beggar. So they cannot go any time for begging. The time were fixed. Otherwise they were meditating. And bhikkhunis, they taught others and helped one another. They also held meeting to settle any quarrel that took place within the Sangh. Those who joined the Sangh included Brahmins, Kshatriya, merchants, laborers, barbers, courtesans, and slaves. Many of them wrote down the teachings of the Buddha. Some of them also composed beautiful poems describing their life in the Sangh. List at least 2 ways in which the Sangh described in this lesson was different from one mentioned in chapter 5. Were there any similarities? So this is something which you have to do. You have to just think about the similarities and the differences. A cave hollowed out in the hills. This is a cave in Karle, presently Maharashtra, monks and nuns lived and meditated in these shelters. So you can see monasteries. To begin with, both Jain and Buddhist monks went from place to place throughout the year, teaching people. The only time they stayed in one place was during the rainy season, when it was very difficult to travel. Then their supporters built temporary shelters for them in gardens, or they lived in natural caves in hilly areas. As time went on, many supporters of the monks and nuns and they themselves felt the need for more permanent shelters, and so monasteries were built. These were known as viharas. The earliest viharas were made of wood and then of brick. Some were even in caves that were dug out in hills, especially in western India. A Buddhist text tells us just as the waters of rivers lose their names and separateness when they flow into the mighty ocean, so are Varna and ranks and family forgotten when the followers of the Buddha join the order of monks. Very often, the land on which the vihara was built was donated by a rich merchant or a landowner or the king. The local people came with gifts of food, clothing, and medicines for the monks and nuns. In return, they taught the people. Over the centuries, Buddhism spread to many parts of the subcontinent and beyond. You will learn about them in chapter 9. Okay, so a Buddhist tells us that the waters of the river, their names were as their names separateness with the flow into the mighty. When they moved toward the ocean and mixed in the ocean, they obviously lost their name. So are the Varn and rank and family forgotten when the followers of Buddha joined the order of the monks. So if somebody joined the monks group or the sangh, they will lose. There will be no discrimination. No rank will be according to the treatment will not be according to the name and rank or religion. They will be treated equally. Okay, so the system of ashram. Around the time when Jainism and Buddhism were becoming popular, Brahmins developed a system of ashrams. Here, the word ashram does not mean a place where people live and meditate. It is used instead for stage of life. So here, this is not the ashram where children used to go and attain knowledge. It is the stages of life. According to this, there are 4 stages or 4 ashrams. That is Brahmacharya, Grihasth, Vanprasth and Sannyas. So first is Brahmacharya. That is the Brahmins, Kshatriya and Vaishya men were expected to lead simple lives and study the Vedas during the early years of their Brahmacharya. So study was the part when Brahmacharya, that stage was known as Brahmacharya. When they got married, that from the name it is clear, it was known as Grihasth. And then it was expected that after they are married, they have children, and then once they are settled, they will move to the forest, that will be Vanprasth. And finally, they will be leading a life where in the forest, and that stage will be known as sannyas. So then they had to marry and live as householders, that was Grihasth. Then they had to live in the forest and meditate, that was Vanprasth. Finally, they had to give up everything and become sannyasi. This system of ashram allowed men to spend some part of their lives in meditation. Generally, women were not allowed to study the Vedas, and they had to follow the ashramas chosen by their husbands. So in what way was the system of ashram different from the life in the sangha? What was the varnas mentioned here? So obviously you can see the difference in the life of the people who were living in the sangha. They had to they had their freedom, like they lead their life as and treatment was equally done. There was no discrimination. Now before we proceed, one more thing, that between Jainism and Buddhism, you can say that why, first of all, why people started following Buddhism. The reason being that uh, mm, Gautam Buddha never said that God didn't exist, and he was quiet on the question of God. And he, according to him, since the religion like Hinduism had become very lot, the rituals have come up, yajnas were very difficult, and that the things were becoming very difficult for a common man to follow them. So he came up with these simple ideas and simple lifestyle, which you can say attracted people to follow it. Now, elsewhere, find Iran in your atlas. Zoroaster was an Iranian prophet. His teachings are contained in a book called the Avesta. The language of the Avesta and the practices described in it are very similar to those of the Vedas. The basic teachings of Zoroaster are contained in the maxim God thoughts, good words, and good deeds. So, according it is maxim is very much similar, that good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. That means you should speak good, you should have a good thinking, you should say good things, and do good things. Here is a verse from Zendavesta. Lord, grant strength and the rule of truth and good thinking, by means of which one shall create peace and tranquility. For more than 1,000 years, Zoroastrianism was a major religion in Iran. Later, some Zoroastrians migrated from Iran and settled down in the coastal towns of Gujarat and Maharashtra. They were the ancestors of today's Parsis. So, the Zoroastrians who came and settled in India and are living in Gujarat and parts of Maharashtra, they who are now Parsis. So, that with this we end the chapter here. I'll be sending you the question answers. Please do them in your notebook. That's all. Take care of yourselves. Thank you, class.